It is Monday, January 6th, 2025, and it's 5 p.m. In attendance, we have Tim, are you here?
Tim Collins, yes, here, present.
All right. Rich?
Here.
And myself, I'm here. Everybody's here. You might notice that Michelle has turned into Rich, for those that missed the last school committee meeting. So he'll be our hand and representative on the subcommittee now. All right, so Rich, in honor of you joining us, why don't you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
It's fine. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, let's see. All right. Are we doing this in order?
However you like, you're the chair.
So let's do the equity statement first, because that's what I have here.
Okay.
So this is also a statement, so this is not going to be going through policy and school committees, correct?
Well, I think it should go to the school committee, but I don't think it has to go through 3 votes. In the sort of draft agenda we put up, if this was approved by the subcommittee, then it could go to the full committee for a vote on Thursday.
Okay. So, yeah, I mean, as per your memo, a number of people were involved in drafting the equity statement, right?
Correct.
And I read it, I thought it was nice. I didn't have any changes. What do you guys think? Do you have any changes for it, or you think it's okay?
Yeah, I did read it. It's a nice, succinct paragraph. I like shorter the better. It's good.
Yeah, that's definitely a meeting.
We worked hard to go from all of these things to a nice succinct paragraph.
It was quite a process to whittle it down, because it is hard to.
I remember working on this, I think 30 years ago, whenever we were doing the statement of our goals, and it was a lot of meetings for. You threw out that. Somewhere along the way, it's gone.
Well, if we got one coming back, hopefully.
Okay. All right, so then if no one has any concerns or discussion about it, I'm looking for a motion to accept.
So moved.
Second. I guess it's
All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? No. Okay, so we'll bring that to the school committee meeting.
Thank you.
Please inform Michelle to add it to the agenda.
I will
As per the millions of emails. Okay. All right. All right. What do we want to do next? I think let's do the AI, because I don't want to talk about the. I'd like to try to avoid talking about the graduation requirements until Steve is here. All right. So I guess I looked at the older version of the AI draft, so I'm kind of quickly skimming here to see if there's any changes. You know, I think this spurred off of our, you know, the MASC meeting. While the MASC themselves did not have a specific AI policy or statement that they recommended, a number of other school districts had written policies, and those were shared with us, correct?
Correct.
And who's on the committee that went through and wrote this, John?
So
Edited it for us, I guess.
this original version, the one that was in your packets, is basically from that that training we attended at MASC. I learned that as I was working with this, that a group of high school teachers had also been working on trying to come up with a generative AI statement. They had been to a little bit more of an extensive training than we went to at that meeting. As you know, that was one session. I think
Yeah,
they
it was
went
1
to
hour.
right.
I hope.
I think they went to 3 to 10 hours on AI, and so they also came out of that with a statement, and which is not the one you have here today. But I did meet with them today and worked on seeing if we could come up with something that sort of captured key points from both this one and what they had developed. I think the main change, I would say, from what we have here is their version is shorter, and the main change that I suggested for theirs is that they had written an AI statement specifically for the high school, and we need something for the entire district. And that was Georgina Trebby and
Kristen Hall,
Kristen Hall,
Carrie.
Carrie Pitcher. So what you see in the second version, the one that's not in your packet, is kind of what we came up with earlier today.
Okay.
But it's still very draft.
It's still very draft, so, right, so you guys are just working on this today. So do you think that this is something that they want some more time to work on?
We were having a conversation about what next steps might be. My understanding is that they had attempted to solicit feedback from their colleagues on this, and that they didn't get as much feedback as they would have hoped for. And so this is another thing that is not, this is not a policy. It could go in at a single vote, but I don't think, based on that, it's really ripe for a vote at this point. What I would like to do is, if we're comfortable with this, or if we come up with language after today's meeting that we're comfortable with, sharing not only with the faculty from the high school, but the faculty from across the district, to see if we get any feedback, and then bringing it to the school committee, because I'd really like to hear what everyone has to say. One of the things I took away from the meeting today is that there is a range of feelings about AI use in the schools, and people are at very different places, and also a range of understanding about it. So I think this could be a vehicle to spur the conversation. And I hate the school committee to approve something that then immediately has some kind of a negative reaction. And so I think at least taking the step of informing people that we've reached language we think is comfortable with. If you have feedback, let us know before it becomes a set in stone.
So, I'm completely on board with that, so I don't think we'll, so if everyone's comfortable with that, maybe we won't do any official action on this today, and we'll look forward to a future policy subcommittee meeting.
But if you have feedback to include it.
So I see what's missing from this one, that was in the other one. There were some comments about staff, so students can only use an AI, the student data privacy, right, agreement. So the students can only use an AI that has signed a student data privacy.
Mhm.
Is that still in the new one?
It is not, and it is something that spurred us to make some changes to our policies, because I do think that is an important piece. I think the reason that it wasn't included in this version is we're still working on getting some of our AIs up to speed with our student data privacy.
Okay, so, all right, so.
So would you like to see that come back?
I would like to see that come back, because that comes to play into everything that the students are allowed to use on their Chromebooks, right?
Yes.
And then the other thing, under the staff part, the do not, so there's a statement there where if the staff are adults, right? So the staff can use an AI so the older version, the staff would be allowed to use an AI that didn't have a student data use agreement. And there was a bunch of do nots though, which a lot of them are common sense. It'll probably need to be one way or the other. Either the staff at school can't use an AI that doesn't have the student data use agreement, or we probably need to have that language back, right, that says if they're going to use one that doesn't protect student privacy, what kind of rough guidelines should they use?
That would be the final bullet point from this.
From the older one, right? And the question I was going to ask is if we could potentially, in that do not use student names, ID numbers, I was going to say photos or images of any kind, or other identifiers. I thought it would be important to do photos, because a lot of people are doing AI photo generation, And then, you know, so having pictures of kids get online that other people can then do AI stuff with, there could be serious fallout.
So would you want to add video as well as photo? AI is creating videos.
Yeah, photo, video, imagery of any kind, or you could just say imagery of any kind. I mean, we're
What
not,
other identifiers you said?
yeah, I mean, pictures of kids are not allowed to go out to the public from the schools, right? So,
There's their website.
We put them on the website.
Sports pictures.
We have the photo.
Yes, we did get consent.
right, you got consent, okay, all right. So anyway, all right, so we'll look forward to hearing more of this? Yes? Yeah. Oh, yeah,
Just wanted to,
you could just speak up, there's only three of us, right?
okay. So that generative AI is like a subset of AI, just so we understand what we're talking about here, we're putting here. And, you know, this is the creation of content part of it. But we mentioned what next summer is a totally different part of AI. And there's this company that's been involved with AI since the beginning out in, from Stanford, actually, our people from Stanford. And we're volunteered to donate some space here, and they're going to have this fascinating program, I think, on AI. But it's not about this kind of AI. It's about the uses of AI, about for good or evil, and coming up with projects where you can use AI for good, and then actually implementing some of those, you know, using their supercomputers, which are tied in back in California. And so by having this for, you know, it's like an advanced AP kind of thing, but it's gonna be marketed to, we get some of our kids to go for nothing, or scholarships for nothing, and then kids from the areas can go and, you know, like the Long Meadows and Wilbrams, this whole area will be able to come here for a couple of weeks, and they're gonna bring in their staff and their people, but it's on AI, but not necessarily on this AI that we're talking about here. This is on actual, the kinds of things AIs can be used for and just brainstorming and having kids work on things like that and actually making a project during those couple of weeks in the summer. And I don't know if we have the exact dates picked out, I guess you were working with that.
Yeah, not yet, but it's gonna be the end of July most likely.
The end of July. And also they said anybody like faculty or anybody else can attend for nothing. I think it's around 1,000, 1,500 they've done before per student, that we'll have some kids going for nothing here that we can offer, you know, like scholarships, and then any faculty or anybody else that wants to sit in, they're willing to have that as a, you know, for nothing also. So I think it's fascinating. You know, I'm around to see what's going on in that. But just to compare, this is, you know, what we're talking about generative is kind of looking at content, these big computers looking at content, and coming up with whether it's the pictures or whether it's doing your paper for you or grading your paper. But the other things we use for, I mean, you know, I've had a Tesla for years, and they wrote code, and the self-driving was okay, but it just wasn't there. And just about a couple months ago, they totally threw out everything, and they did it with true AI, with these supercomputers that taught the car how to drive. And this morning in my garage, you know, I take my wife to Boston to a doctor's appointment with Mass General. I just press a button, and I sit back and don't touch a thing, and it pulls right into the Mass General garage. I mean, it's got it down packed, all through AI. I mean, the difference is night
From
and
here
day.
to there?
Yeah. I just sit there and I sit, you know, whatever, trying to fall asleep.
What kind of car is
It's a
it?
Tesla. But it doesn't have to be gas or electric, it can be any car using that technology. And they didn't get it right until they actually used AI to teach. So they had hundreds of thousands of lines of code they just threw away. They just chucked it. All those programs that have been writing that code for years and years and years. Let's throw that out and go to this AI model with these supercomputers, you know, that are out there controlling this, and it's pretty remarkable. So just seeing something like that, I mean, I never thought I'd see that in my time actually working like that, but that was night and day. They sent an over-the-air update, and all of a sudden it's totally different. So that's the kind of stuff that you'll be thinking about where things can be used for. And, you know, you think about old people, and I just go in my car, and I don't care about seeing or rain or whatever, just press a button, it takes you someplace. And I'd rather have my grandson, which is close, to put him in the car, take him to his house in Long Meadow, and then the car comes back by itself. That's going to happen very soon, what's going on there. So there's all kinds of cool things that AI can make happen, and I'm sure things in the medical world and everything else with taking all the vast knowledge out there and putting it together. So I think this thing in the summer is a different thing that we're talking about here. And there's so much good that can be done. There's also evil that can be done too, and that you got to watch out for. So anyway, that's just a little bit on how we define this all.
I'm happy I won't be involved in writing the policy for the
motor vehicles allowed on the roads without anyone in the driver's seat or anyone in the vehicle competent to drive. Should
Well,
something
I was
go wrong.
just back from San Francisco, where I was, and they have the Waymos, and they're geo-fenced into like a few cities, like Phoenix, LA, San Francisco. So they can't leave the city. The Teslas can go any place. They're kind of learning as they go. But the Waymos have been driving around now for over a year. You have an app that comes, there's no driver whatsoever, and it picks you up, and except that it stops and waits. So we're in this rush hour, and all of a sudden one stopped here, one there, there's three, and another there, and people are honking at it. It doesn't care because there's no driver there. It's just waiting for people to get in. Causing this incredible traffic jam. And then a lot of it was interesting reading the story. You don't think about, women were saying they liked Waymos better than an Uber or Lyft driver because you don't have some creepy guy driving. But then there's people that start following it, and no one goes to the house, and there's no driver to actually, you know, do anything about it, because you're sitting in a car, and it could be, somebody could be following, seeing you get in and following you. So there's other things that are coming up, where some teenagers are starting to play a game where they're blocking the Waymos, and they can't get out, and, you know, so there's lots of interesting things, but they're all over San Francisco. I mean, you, on any block, they're like cabs in New York City. It's all driverless. And then, of course, you got the idea about every time you have one of those, all those Uber drivers, Lyft drivers, especially all the immigrants that come in and drive that, what are they going to do now? They're gone. You're not needed. And then, very shortly, all the truck drivers are going to be, they're going to be gone too. They'll just be, these semis will just be going coast to coast with no drivers, which is way safer than a human. A lot less accidents. And so I think the self-driving vehicles are, I mean, it sees way more with all the cameras around. I've seen people, you know, all of a sudden it's not turning left, and it sees this kid in a bicycle going this way that I never would have seen. It's going to cross, it just waits, and it sees so much that I can't see in order just for safety. So there's so much good, but also there's thinking about all the ins and outs of all the different things it can do. And that's what this program's going to be next summer, too. So I think it's going to be a fascinating program for whoever shows up for that.
Cool.
Okay, so we'll keep working on that one.
All right, that sounds good. All right, now we're on to the graduation requirements.
So as you can see, this one was officially put on hold in 2016. So it's, we're finally getting around to it.
2016?
I told you it was a different policy subcommittee.
Oh, so they put the policy on hold without anything to replace it?
Correct, but, I mean, we do have the program of studies which describes graduation requirements, and so that was pretty much the controlling document this whole time. So, as you know, question 2 passed, and I guess I will speak for myself. I thought that that just meant students would continue to take MCAS, but it wouldn't count towards graduation. We'd only be dealing with graduation requirements. However, there were, even at that MASC meeting, which I think was the day after the election, or maybe 2 days after the election, there were some sessions about how districts needed to really quickly respond to the passage of question 2, and a number of statewide conference calls on this, because the language of question 2 says that the competency determination, which is the part that was done by MCAS, now will be satisfied through local requirements. And so we have to determine what our substitute for MCAS is for the competency determination. So the 10th grade MCAS was set really at 10th grade level. And so what we did as a team was try to identify what are the courses that teach the standards that are covered in that old version of MCAS, or actually will continue to be MCAS because they'll continue to take it. And what would we accept as satisfactory demonstrations that student had the knowledge that used to be measured on the test. So we've identified a series of courses for the competency determination. That's part B of this policy. And then we've also determined that there are students who in grades 3 through 8 have traditionally shown their mastery through means other than taking the typical types of assessments that are given in classes. And so we want to be able to continue to offer an opportunity for students who aren't able to participate in on-demand testing with a way to demonstrate that they are able to meet the competency determination through a portfolio process. And so, once again, thank Steve and Josh for all their work on this, but that's basically what this draft policy would do. So the first part says all the graduation requirements is what you need for a diploma, and then the second part says what you need for the competency determination, which is sort of the stepping stone towards the diploma.
Cool.
Are we only offering one kind of diploma?
Correct.
And is the goal for everybody to get a diploma?
In the past 10 years,
7 kids.
we've had, 6 kids, so my goal would be to keep it pretty close to that. So most students would, almost all students would be able to get a diploma. But if you think through this process and think through our students, there are some students we have who we can reasonably predict would not be able to demonstrate mastery either through passing the test or doing the portfolio. We think it's a very small number. We think it's probably, 1 out of 500 basically is what we've been at.
My thing, one reason I was interested in graduation requirements, and which you heard my speech in the school committee meeting a couple weeks ago, or whatever it was, is that I work with schools all over the world, and I started doing some research, including Finland. And where Finland doesn't have standardized tests, but they do have a national test to get your diploma. And almost every single country in the world has a national. It's not statewide, it's national. Mm-hmm. That, and this says you have a diploma, and not everybody gets it. And this diploma means you can both go on to college work, you can also go on to other kind of work. You can take a test, you can, answer questions at a reasonable rate. And, in India, 87% pass, more or less. They study for years sometimes. You can take it again and again. So the question I have is, over in most other countries, if you have a high school diploma, it really means you're a certain level of learning. You have the ability to do X, Y, and Z in a company, to take tests, for example, and to have different kinds of skills, to read at a certain level. You have to know, it's like social studies or their general, know about your country, wherever it happens to be. And that's every place, from Russia to China to India, every place. So the question is, should here, I see in our country, where you look in comparison to other countries, we're kind of not up there in terms of some of the learning. In fact, you go to MIT and 2/3 of the kids are all from Asia right now, in terms of the graduates. So the question is, it's great, I love diversity, I love having everybody have a chance to do everything, but should a high school diploma, and this is a question I haven't answered, mean something? Should it mean that you have a knowledge, ability to do something that's kind of up here, and you can have different levels of diplomas, but it's almost like here's a diploma that certifies that you're able to this, and an employer, any place could say they have a diploma, and it means you can do X, Y, Z. Right now, if somebody applies to work for me, I would, where we're going, like you said, only 7 kids, you need to have somebody that's certain knowledge, certain ability to compete with other companies, and have to give them our own tests to see where they're at. Now, a high school diploma doesn't mean much because of that. So that's just a little bit about what the question is. Should a diploma mean something? I think it's something worth thinking about. I have no, skin in the game about what our requirements should be. I believe there should be something that's challenging, like it's a statewide, it's a countrywide thing.
There are
Competes with other
several
countries.
pages of tables here, Rich, with specific requirements where students have to demonstrate various levels of competency depending on subject. Several essays that have been written to very specific
Oh, no, sorry.
rubrics and performance and mathematics down to even certain, there's actually mathematical formulas in the tables. where
No,
you have
I
to
saw
show
those. Those
the
are actually
performance.
challenging. I saw that.
So I think that what they've given us here, there's a lot of requirements here that the students have to be. In fact, the biggest question I had from this, Steve, maybe you could comment, is this stuff that we're currently tracking, and if it's not, how much extra work is it going to be now for us to keep track of this, keep after making sure the kids are making all of these milestones, and then if there's a kid that's has fallen off the rails, what are we doing to keep them track of? And are we going to need more people now to help keep track of it?
But what is passing also? You can have grades tests like that and say if you get 1 in 20, you're graduating. So depends where's the, you can have all those content, but you have to have specifics as to what part of that content should they master. And we're gonna try to have everybody pass, I mean, master 10%, you get a high school diploma. I mean, that's all a big part of it. And I did speak to somebody who works at a school in Quincy, who actually, she's a special needs teacher, and she voted against the question. I mean, they said that we're just gonna move kids through here just to get rid of them. And I know when I taught in Long Meadow, years ago, there were kids that nobody wanted to see back again, and they just moved them on. You know, so the question is, because there was no MCAS requirement, they said, let's get rid of this kid, we don't want him, nobody wants to teach him next year, we don't want to be involved with their parents or calling a complaint to the principals and superintendents. Goodbye. So that's the thing where you have some standard that you can say, it's not us, it's, you gotta pass this standard, whether it's countrywide, statewide. I mean, our country is, you know, most states have a standard now to do, Massachusetts is one of the few. And the other thing, not that I'm for this at all, is that I read an article after that that said, the question said, they can't use the MCAS as a statewide requirement, but the individual districts could use it if they wanted to. This was an article. They could say, as an individual district, we can use anything. Like, you have to be able to stand on your head to graduate. But you can also say, you have to have X on the MCAS too, even though it's not a statewide requirement. It can be a local requirement. And I'm not saying we do that. I'm just saying that that's what I read.
Yeah, I voted in favor of the question because I didn't think that a kid should be prevented from graduating if they were sick on the day they took the test, or have to be put into remediation when they've clearly demonstrated in their coursework and stuff that they did have competencies. And I'm sure that there's many kids that correlated, right? They didn't perform in the classes, and they didn't perform for the teachers, and they didn't perform in the, you know, but I think, at least in my mind, the spirit of that question was that, you know, holding a single high-stakes test over the kids' heads wasn't fair. And correct me if I'm wrong, but long before this, there was a second pathway for special needs kids that were the special needs kids. And it's you've copied the very specific definitions for how they can be into the pathway that are in this, where you know, the special needs kids were bypassing the MCAS requirement for having their own version, right?
So the two paths were either that they achieved a passing score to the standard on the MCAS tests, and they had to continue to take English, math, or science classes for all 4 years, which are our graduation requirements, our course requirements. And then the second pathway was a competency determination portfolio, which is where our draft requirements came from. That's where the sort of course requirements and tables are from, because that's what the state has determined for years, sort of what a grade 10 demonstration of mastery is. And we had actually a robust discussion around, do we lessen those requirements? So for example, 3 essays versus 4, or 3 math problems that demonstrate each of those equations rather than 4. And we felt as though that holding students to high standards, whether you have disabilities or not, was important, and not to expect less of them, but to also provide them an opportunity to demonstrate their knowledge in a different way. So you could have a 21-year-old who's only working on their portfolio after taking all of their course requirements and can still earn their diploma from the truck, which we thought was really important. Or you could have a student who behaviorally or social emotionally may not be able to access a traditional school setting, but could still earn or demonstrate some of their knowledge through an alternative pathway to earn their diploma. So we felt like it opened up more doors, but still held sort of the essence of what a high school diploma would be moving forward.
He said, you know, where we disagree is that should a kid, you know, almost every kid be held to a single high test, now you can take it again, but most countries of the world do have kids that have to prepare for a single high stakes test, whether it's the end of, it's a multi-day thing usually. And by the way, I saw this fairly recently, it's a pretty new movie, 12th Fail, It's India, a Bollywood movie, and it's about a kid from a village that has no chance, with the system to ever make it, take those tests, and he just wants to learn, and what he has to go through in order to get a government job, you have to pass this test, and the years he spends trying to pass it, and the studying and the tutoring. I mean, it's a really, Bollywood movies are always happy endings, but it's quite a, it's 12th fail, 2003, but it's also, it tells a picture, what they really had to do, and all the kids that are working so hard to pass this single high stakes test, which is what 1 billion Indians have to pass, and the same with the Chinese, the same with the Europeans. The pressure's on, and you learn how to work with the pressure. So in our country, if you don't have it, is it saying, are we lowering our educational standards in a sense, worldwide competition I'm talking about, because we don't do that. Those people are not really challenged, and I think that even with Wes Moore, I brought that up. He said, he was the governor of Maryland now, but when he wrote that book, The Other Wes Moore, he talked about the importance of being challenged in his neighborhood. Not letting me get by for less, as you said. I don't want to, because they thought, okay, we're going to let him get through. We're not going to challenge him from poor, from a minority place. And when somebody decided to challenge him, you see blossom, depending on our governor of Maryland right now, future presidential candidate. So there's things that I took from his book, lessons learned. So that's just a little bit. And I'm not saying yes, no. I'm saying I believe in the equity and helping everybody, but I also believe in some high stakes and let's be world competitive. So all these people come from overseas and start companies here, and our doctors. I was just in Mass General, they're all foreign basically. Let's we want to develop more of our own. We have more of the challenge. So.
There still are high stake tests. There's the SATs.
Oh yeah, different college.
The ACTs. And then for those who go to college, they have the LSATs and the MCATs to look forward to. For those that go beyond that, they have the boards and the...
So that's what we're going to say, that's the high stakes test, and everybody else is just...
But, I mean, that's, well, question 2 passed, so
May I respond just a sec?
yes.
I think what we're saying is, we are trying to hold the line with very high standards. We're just saying that it's not going to be measured by a single test, And I'll share one of the things that was like the most disappointing. I guess I can share this now since you graduated. One of the most disappointing moments of my life as an educator was when I went to orientation for my son at optometry school, and he said, "Your child for the next 4 years will never get anything other than multiple choice questions because the board's a multiple choice, and we're conditioning them for that." And it's like this is going to be the most expensive form of education we pay for, and it's going to be the worst.
Yeah.
It's going to be picking 1 out of 4 or 1 out of 5. That, to me, that was hard to hear.
25% was passing.
Right. Well, not exactly.
I know.
Right.
Big C.
Right.
That's how I got through.
Yeah.
In almost all the medical specialties, the board certification is multiple choice exam. There are very few exceptions. For those who want to go into surgery, there is also a full day long oral examination component as part of the board certification. After you've passed the multiple choice test, you get the opportunity to well, actually they do it online now, but it used to be everybody would go to Chicago and they'd rent out a couple of floors in the hotel, because where else are you going to have enough private rooms to do all this? And it's a very special experience, having gone through it myself. I could twice, because one's for general surgery, one's for pediatric surgery.
Let's say that 50 years ago, of course, in ancient history, I did have some foreign kids in my class in Long Meadow High School in chemistry. They were great, memorizing, but when I said, here's a lab, here's some chemicals, go figure it out on your own, they didn't do as well. So there was some things where they had been conditioned for test, memorize, feedback, whereas I tried to open it up and say, here's a problem, go solve the problem. So that was 50 years ago. Nowadays, I think, whether I don't know if they can do both or not, it's just the standards and who comes over and where our doctors are coming from and entrepreneurs. I just like high standards, and I'm fine with what you guys are doing. I just thought it was worth a question to ask.
I think if you look deeper into a child's record, it's grade point average. Kids who are passing with D's certainly aren't as competent as the kids who are passing with A's. So we do have a differentiation in how we grade people. we fall down, and it still goes on today, to kids that you just want to pass on. And that's usually a behavioral issue, and we have fallen down on dealing with kids in trauma. And I don't care whether you're in Wilbraham or in Springfield, we don't do as good a job as we need to, and that affects their learning and their performance. When they get to a point where they're balanced and mentally healthy, then you'll see them grow. So I don't know that we can come up with, like the old New York where they have the 2 different kinds of diplomas, but I do think and if you were to look at the students and look at their grade point average, what you're looking for, you would find. But that's not one test, that is 4 years of kids' work. Now some kids, the light doesn't go on until their junior year. And then you see a big shift. We all know kids who are like a slacker, and then all of a sudden, fire was lit, they saw something, I don't know what it was, but boom, they perform real well, and they do well.
I agree with you in grades, but a lot of schools now are eliminating the grades, and they're just going like the standards-based grading, like you're progressing. So you could have 2 kids, you know, took this kid a day to learn 2 and 2 is 4, and it took this kid a month, and yet they both get the same. When you look at some kind of record or transcript, they appear the same. They're not differentiating anymore if they get rid of grades.
I don't think there's any high schools that are doing that, are there?
There's a bunch of private
There are
schools.
some. But that's not what we're proposing to do.
No,
Yeah.
not here.
No, it's-
That's where I see some of the stuff going to.
This has been very good discussion, but I would like to circle back for an answer to my original question from Steve or John. Like, this, keeping track of all this looks like a lot of work. Are we already doing it? What's the workflow gonna be like? Are we gonna be able to handle it if this comes into policy?
We will need 17 more people. No.
No.
Don't worry, we can kick that to finance now, right? No.
I'm on finance too.
No, sorry, it's your problem. No, it's really very simple. I think a couple of comments that I could make. I do have confidence in Massachusetts being the #1 state in our country for education. I have confidence in our teachers in this district in terms of preparing students to meet those #1 standards in our country. Not necessarily a global comparison, but definitely in the country. And so our curriculum based on those standards, we have step 1 to get that diploma is you have to take and pass all the classes that are required, right? Step 2, when you're focused on the competency determination, the MCAS was previously focused on grade 10 standards. So what we've done is said, okay, what are the grade 10 courses that a student may have had to pass within our graduation requirements? So that's one way to meet the competency. And that could be a kid, an advanced kid that's a freshman, or it could be a late bloomer that's a junior. As long as they get through those minimum 10th grade classes, we currently do that. So little Stevie Hale in high school is maybe not the best student and is one of those late bloomers. I might be retaking some of those core content classes as a junior. So that's already happened, no extra work. The shift then is for the kid that has certain disabilities, social emotional needs, trauma needs, all the things we've talked about, is we can go to this alternative path of the competency determination, the competency binder, or the proficiency binder, I think is better referred to. When we talk about those kids, those are the kids that we're talking about 1 every couple of years, 2 every couple of years. So it will be additional work that we have to kind of flush out. But I think we can manage that through the staff that we have. You know, we may have to develop some tutoring rates for that teacher. Like, hey, staff, anybody want to take on a math competency, a proficiency binder with Stevie Hale? And one of the math teachers, yeah, I'll do it. Okay, it's going to pay, 10 or 12 hours a month at the tutoring rate, that kind of thing. Which you're talking about $400, $500, that kind of thing. So I do think that part will be extra work, but I think we're thinking of such a small, you know, when you go through those descriptors, like, that's a very small amount of students.
Okay.
Would you agree, Josh?
Yeah.
What do you guys think?
Specific question.
Well, I mean, well, so, did you get, do you have questions about any of the specifics in the tables or the I mean,
What was the answer to number 3B?
and I don't think the answers are here. We could be in trouble.
I mean, it definitely, this question is challenging. The question, of course, is what, do you have to know all of them, or just what percent do you need to know to get out, to pass them? What are we gonna really hold people to? So many people sit there in grading say, oh, we're gonna get much harder this year, we're gonna change, you know, an F is not gonna be, 60 anymore, it's gonna be 70. Yeah, but then they just change the difficulty of the questions.
No,
It
but
doesn't really
this
matter.
is like the driver's test, right? Every box has to be checked. So, this 100% of what's listed in these tables, or they're going to.
Well, I mean, it's, you know, like you add, subtract, multiply polynomials. So let's say you give 10 polynomials, what do you have to do? Do 1 right, or 2 right, or 5 right, or 10 out of 10, or 9 out of 10? So in other words, it's, and if it's multiple choice, then you get 25%.
At least 4 examples from each of the categories. But again, you're talking about there are 6 kids in 10 years.
Yeah.
So that,
And I do think there are some students with disabilities who will say obtaining the competency determination through the classes isn't going to work, and obtaining it through the portfolio isn't going to work. There are some students who say, you know, we have students now who don't get phones. We'll still have that small number, that, you know, roughly 1 out of 500 who are not able to do either option.
So, so you said there's 4 they have to have 4 examples, right? Just,
yeah.
what is, an example, is it a test that was passed? Or there were 8 questions on the test that were those and they got 4 of them right?
Yeah, so you're my tutor. Principal Provost has assigned to work with me. So you and I would sit down and say, okay, out of this cluster, we need to create 4 expressions that describe a variety of contexts. So you and I would work together on that, and once I had done those 4, you'd put that in the binder, check the box, then you go to the next one. So that's how it's not necessarily like you slide a paper over and you kind of peek and see, did they get 4 right? No, it's like working with them and teaching them how to do it, and it's very hands-on.
They're not being
process.
tested on it.
Well, you're not being tested on it, but you may not have a test in a true sense of a test, but Dr. Terabasi is going to have to teach me how to do this, then give me some homework on it, give me some tries at it, and then say, okay, now we're going to do 4 of them. And then once we've done 4, I've done 4 to demonstrate that particular cluster, check that box, move on to the next one.
Done 4 on your own or with help? In other words, what they're really learning.
I think it depends on the disability, I think it depends on what the IEP says.
I would say that typically what I've seen with the old school competency portfolios is that it is independent work. So you do get support, you get reteaching, that may be one-on-one with an adult, but they are expected to demonstrate their ability to solve those problems by themselves.
It's like the MCAS would be taken by yourself, not was sitting down next to anybody, where it's a state standard, it was a state standard.
Yeah, but it's a more real-world environment. The MCAS is not a real-world environment.
Not in the real world, you're making decisions on your own, you know, whatever you happen to be doing.
Did you like them?
Quite frankly, I trust if a kid is passing courses being taught by our teachers, I trust they've got the competencies. Now, as I said, there's varying levels of competency, and that's reflected in the grades that they get.
If they're getting grades, yes, which they are here.
Well, we do give grades here, but we're not talking about eliminating grades here. So I'm comfortable with what we're doing right now without changing a thing. We build curriculums, we set standards, we ask the kids to meet those standards, we trust our teachers to make a determination what level of competency have they reached. You know, F, no competency, D, skin of your teeth kind of thing, A, you're out the door. I think we're doing that right now. I think this whole testing, I hear what you're saying, and you're right, but the fact is, a kid coming out of high school could have been, I have seen this, kids coming out of high school, who were the kids that got pushed by and whatever, who they calmed down, whatever trauma was in their life or whatever, they find something they have an interest in themselves, and they take off. To make these judgments on young people this young and start labeling them, I got a problem with.
No, I'm with you there. I'm talking about, you just when you talk about where schools are going to and where you can look at the grades, is the concept of everybody passing. We want everybody to succeed, which is good. But in order to get everybody to succeed, what do you need to do? You need to sit there and, that's where standards-based grading comes from. You talk about the competencies. You know, you're just trying to get it down so that everybody can have some success, even if it's 2 and 2 is 4, you get some success, you're progressing, you're doing whatever, and you can succeed and get a decent grade on that, but it all depends what you're really measuring for that particular kid, and how you're, you know, I've seen this over and over again with these schools that are going that way. You know, we want everybody to succeed, we want everybody to not succeed, which is good in theory, but then it's, what is success, really, in terms of absolute compared to other countries and other states and everything else. Just a question above our pay grade in a sense, but something that I'm just concerned with.
Well, I mean, success is demonstrating competency, and everything that the state has determined is supposed to be in the curriculum for the public school system in the state, right?
Well, the
I
other
mean,
thing,
that's where this list comes from, right?
Well, the list that is in here, the list of, for the portfolio assessment, comes from the standards that are currently in the 10th grade and ways in which the state has identified would be appropriate alternatives to passing the test. So that is for a small group of kids. For the large group of kids, what Steve has done is identified the courses that cover those topics. And for those kids, passing the course is the way to determine the competency. So just to really simplify the thing, in order for a student to get a diploma, they need 2 things. They need to have a CD, the competency determination, and they need to meet the course requirements. In the past, what's happened is students took a series of MCASs, and when they pass enough of them, they go on a list that goes to the principal saying they've got their competency determination. Then the next thing the principal has to do is go to what's in here, Part A, and those are the course requirements. Say, okay, he's got the CD, now has he met all the course requirements? When you have those 2 things, you have a diploma. But now the test is gone, and so in place of the test, you either pass these courses as somewhere, you know, either 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, whatever, you have to pass these ones, and you have to reach these course requirements, or you have to satisfy the portfolio, and you have to do the course requirements. So that's what we're trying to solve here.
But the question is, what does passing a course mean? And who decides it, and what tests there are? In other words, I've seen, you know, the grading thing, I've dealt with so many schools on grading issues. You know, they say 90s and A at this school. Well, every teacher, yeah, I used to make up my own tests and quizzes. The other teachers made up their own tests and quizzes. I don't know if they all have to use a standard one here. They make up their own. I could make my average come out to be a 95 or an 85 or 75. Easy questions or hard questions. So to sit there and say 90 is an A and 80 is a B was meaningless. It's all going to be statistically, you know, calculated. And the idea is what % do you want to get A's and what % do you want to get F's. How should anybody get F's?
Well, I don't think in this regard, it would be appropriate to use a bell curve, because theoretically, everyone could meet the requirements and pass. Whereas if you use a bell curve, right, you're gonna have, you're gonna have,
Winners and
the
losers.
bell curve will force there to be losers, even though they may have missed.
Which would be nice
right?
if there was, which would be nice if everybody succeeding again, but the question would be, what determines what's passing? Because it's really arbitrary to say it's a 90 and let each teacher make up their own tests and questions. You can make everybody pass
Teacher's
easy.
gonna decide if the kid has passed the class, but I mean, so I mean, I've been through so many open houses, and the teachers have very detailed rubrics as to how the grades are calculated. It's not like the teacher says, hey, I like to look at this kid, let's move him along, you know.
No, but there's-
Right, it's like this percent based on the homework, and if you turn, even if you turn in the homework late, and you get it all right, you still can't get full credit a lot of the time, and this percent from the test, and this, and I know the teachers write the test, but we pay our we invest in our teachers, we value them, and, you know, and they have expertise, and, you know, just like people trust me to remove a kid's appendix, I trust the teachers to, you know, be able to, you know, write a test that's appropriate and teach the kids what they're supposed to be learning for that particular
The
course.
number of teachers that don't understand weighting and how weighting affects grades and all that is like 90% of teachers seem to don't understand that concept. And if you ever have time, I can explain it, I can go into it in detail. But even with honor rolls, the same thing. What is an honor roll? You know, what percent of kids make it? What, you know, how do you decide what your cutoff is? And we had problems. My kids were going here. It's like, oh, you got a, you know, like the 89 in woodworking, so it was all A's, you know, whatever it was. You couldn't get a B, but you could have the highest average, but they didn't want to calculate a GPA. There's all kinds of different ways that the system is not exactly accurate mathematically, and there's all kinds of games that can be played, and that's where a standardized test equalizes everything, because there's so many different ways to do it. One of the things that in our software that we did years ago is that you could sit there and take two teachers teaching two exact sections of the same section, the same course. And you could say over time, because one year you could have, this guy could have the smart kids, this guy could have not. And there were two physics teachers, one went to high school. And I saw that over 10 years, this guy's mean grade was like an 88.5, and this guy's mean grade was like a 79.5. So that means the luck of the draw when you do scheduling is a 10-point difference in your score. And so I used to tell principals, hey, you should need to look at this stuff and say to these two guys, you guys got to teach the same stuff. You got, you know, over time you ought to be somewhere near each other. So it's not just the luck of the draw, but you get this guy, you're going to have a big higher grade point average. So there's so much stuff that goes on like that you can see
but
from numbers
both of
and
those
statistics.
grades are passing.
Both are
The
passing.
students in both of those classes have demonstrated.
Yeah, but you're not
We're
number one in the
talking, we're not
class.
talking about who should go to Harvard here,
Yeah.
okay? We're talking about who's demonstrated competency worthy of a high school diploma. And a passing grade in the course, in a course, both of those average scores are passing grades in those courses.
Actually, but I mentioned those scores, but obviously the teacher that had the lowest scores, more kids failed than the other one by far, if you're talking about competency. You know, in terms of who you happen to get by the luck of the draw.
Yeah, but the teacher with the lower average scores might have had higher expectations, and actually, those kids might actually score better in the physics section
And
of the
this is over time, you know, in terms of your average. But also, you're not going to be number one in your class for the honor roll, for valedictorian. There's all kinds of things. Again, you know, whether you're talking about the top of the top, the bottom of the bottom, but standardized tests kind of is a way to equalize it. Everybody's taking the same thing, and there's such a great difference between teachers and such a great difference between courses. Unless they give you a book and said, this is the test you give as a physics teacher, and you give the same test over here, which they don't, unless they've changed.
So I'm trying to feel where you're going with this, Rich, and I guess you're, where you may be going is that, you know, we could, as a school, make the MCAS graduation requirement.
You could, or you could have some
We
sort of
could,
something that, at a certain level.
You won't, I don't want to do that. You've not convinced me. Tim?
I'm not saying the MCAS.
I, quite frankly, we're sitting here talking about bringing our own standards down to the 10th grade level.
Well, they've always been there.
Yeah, but
For the
to
minimum,
get a
for
diploma,
getting
you gotta pass all the courses, 4 years of math, 4 years of language arts.
Yes.
We're talking about dropping it down, you got competency at 10th grade?
No,
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 no.
No, cause we already have what we need.
My definition is
but
pass.
just,
No.
when you have the CD, you don't have the diploma. It's one ingredient that you need for the diploma. It says, so for example, I can't take 4 English and 3 math. You can't take 4 English and 3 math that avoid these courses that are identified. The English Language Arts and Composition, the sophomore English, Algebra 1, Geometry, Algebra 2, and Biology. We're saying those are the minimums within this. Because with our graduation requirements right now, you don't necessarily have to take those courses. You have to take 4 years and 3 years, but they could be anything. The CD says these are the minimum requirements that we're making everybody do. And then the graduation is saying, in addition to those minimum requirements, you have to satisfy all these other requirements. Now there's more flexibility in how you get to the other requirements, because once you've satisfied those, you have reached a certain level of competency, but that doesn't mean you're ready for a diploma. You have to do all the rest of these too in order to get the diploma.
I don't think it's what's the definition of pass, and that was the only difference we have here, is that, you know, when you have an MCAS or something like that, there's a certain set standard, and it's the same for every teacher, everybody, whatever it is, that you've earned this, you can answer this question, you pass. Otherwise, with different teachers sending their own, you know, making their own questions, what gets you up to 60 or 65, whatever passing happens to be, what is it? And some teachers, you know, you can pass with almost doing nothing. No, not necessarily meeting a minimum standard. That's the only thing I was bringing up. You know, don't have any skin in the game or anything. It's just the idea of what's the definition of pass is and how you standardize it between classes and between courses.
Well, I think that's where your supervision of me and my supervision of Steve comes in. You know, I have not seen teachers here who will pass a student for doing nothing. But if there were, I'm sure Steve would be, you know, addressing that, and I would be addressing it.
I'm not saying it is going to happen. It's just,
So
It might help to know, sorry.
Oh,
It might be
go
helpful to know that in the current class of 2025, there was only one student who had not met the competency determination from the previous MCAS. So he has, or she, has continued to take the MCAS. We've been continuing to tutor that student. Now that the law has passed, we now look at that student's graduation requirements, the 4-year graduation requirements. That student has met those identifiers. So in 260 students as a 1-class sample size, we're talking about 1 student.
that's so few. You know, you guys do a great job, and I'm not complaining
So
about you.
I just want to give you that data.
I was talking more about the state and country as a whole.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
In terms of general thing, you guys, we're okay here, but I know in so many places they're just, you know, what's the definition of failing? What's the definition of there? It's just, let's move the kids on.
So we have a proposed policy, which is long overdue since we've had no policy since 2016. Do we want to move ahead with this, or do we have specific things that we want to be changed on it? Or request revision? Do we need to think about it and bring it up? We're coming up to 6 o'clock, and I promised people that we would end at 6. So I'm fine with putting this off to our next meeting if we feel that we need to have more discussion and stuff. I read through it, and I've asked the questions I had, and they answered them, so I don't have any other.
Yeah, I mean,
I personally don't have any other concerns, but
I put my trust in the
I'm
educators.
important in what,
You know, I put my trust in the educators, you know, what they say, so I could express my concerns or just opinions of things, but I think they do a great job, and I go with what they say, so.
I have no problem with it, but I'd like us to review it on an ongoing basis. You know, it's something new. We don't know how it's gonna play out, and I have no problem with it. I just think when you set a standard like this, you need to constantly review it and update it. Because, you know, if Thomas Edison and Einstein would not have passed the damn MCAS.
No, but there could be a test that we could give to say you have to pass this.
All I'm saying
Hampton
is,
Wilbraham diploma.
these are human beings we're dealing with. They develop at different rates, they have different interests, they have different talents and skills. You know, we have kids who are dynamite hands-on learners, and quite frankly, we're not offering them enough hands-on education, and we're all paying the price for that. You ever try to get a plumber these days?
Oh, you can't get it. Oh, no, you're absolutely right. But I'm saying even that plumber needs to know math and English at a certain level. I'm not saying 12th grade level, I'm saying you have a minimal level, 10th grade. You have to read or write and do math at a 10th grade level to get out. And this could be a standardized test that would be a handle over here, regional districts, standardized tests, that you know this minimum competency, no matter what teacher you have, no matter whatever, you can take a test and pass it. At the end of your, a simple test, not a hard one, at the end of your, to help get your diploma. That's kind of what I'd be for, but obviously I think we're doing above and beyond that for most kids. And there's so few kids that fall into that. But I just like to see a standard for the whole state. I like that, some kind of standard, not what we had, not MCAS, but a standard that, just like they do in other countries. That movie, 12 Failed, it's a really good, interesting movie to watch.
All right, so I'm looking for either a motion to approve or a motion to table until the next meeting.
I'll move to approve this as long as we evaluate it on an ongoing basis.
I agree with that, and that's what we do all the time with
Yeah.
policy subcommittee, right?
Yes,
Every year.
absolutely.
We get to the end of the list, we're like, we're done, and then the next year comes and we do it all again.
I agree.
Okay, cool, all right. Is that a second?
I'm a second.
You're a second.
I'm not a
All right.
contrarian, I just like to go along and discuss things enough.
Cool. All right, all those in favor?
Aye?
Aye. All right, so we can put this on the agenda for a school committee meeting for first reading.
And
Please let Michelle know.
if I can share one thing to
Yes.
ease Mr. Allen's, Mr. Allen, right?
Collins.
Collins, sorry, I was thinking 10 Mile. I mean, Long Meadow. But one of the things in terms of constant renewal, this is gonna have to now go in our program of studies. So the program of studies comes before the curriculum sub every year, and then the full committee. So it may not be a policy review in a sense, but if you saw something in the program of studies that caused you concern, that could kick it to, hey, policy, we need to look at this, I don't like this. I just wanted you to know that.
Motion to adjourn?
So move.
What's the next date? We decide a date?
Oh, we gotta set a
Yes,
date.
Set a date.
Because I'm not around that
Yeah, let's set a
much.
date, let's set a
If
date.
Thank you,
here,
Mr.
so-
It's much
Redeker.
easier in person to do this. All right, so how are things looking from the MASC?
The only thing that I'm aware of is I know Michelle wants us to review our calendar policy because it currently says we can only do 1 year at a time, even though we have been doing 2 years at a time. So that's the only other item that I'm aware needs to come to us.
Okay, so.
And of course, the continued work on
All right,
the AI.
so we're looking at January, we're looking at February then.
Okay, so I'm here until the 27th. I tell you where I'm going. If you want me, I'm not, it's fine if you.
Until the
down.
27th of, no.
January,
I
so.
don't think, it doesn't sound like we need another meeting in January,
Okay.
right?
Okay, so I'm
so
going
when
to be in
you-
India from the 27th to like February 6th.
Okay.
And then I'm back for a week. And then on the 13th, I'm leaving again till the beginning of March. So February, the time would be like this, well, it's Friday, something like the 10th, 11th, 12th, something like that. Other than that.
All right, Monday, how does Monday, February 10th look for people?
Looks good right now.
Looks good for me.
Looks good for me.
It's good for John.
5 o'clock okay?
8 p.m.
5 p.m.
Yeah, 5 p.m.
Although I'm fine with 5 a.m. actually.
John, is that okay for you on Monday, the February 10th it is?
All right, very good.
Thank you.
No problem, all right. Motion to adjourn?
So move. Second?
Second, great.
All those in favor?
Aye?
Aye, okay.
I like the way you run a meeting.